Welcome back to Coding with Kyle. In today's episode, we will look into what it takes to integrate a front end with your existing canister that we've just written. The steps that we'll cover are how to set up a Webpack configuration, how to use the dfx generate command to create types that we can interface with, and then show how to use the auth client to get an identity that we'll be able to use to make authenticated calls. This will not cover the full process of building the front end because that takes a while, but we are filming a separate recording of a live stream that will be linked in the description, and you can go there to watch the full development process if that's something that interests you. Let's take a look at how we wire up our front-end application to know about the avatar canister that we had just coded in the previous episodes. The first thing to do is make sure that we have dfx running in our local environment. Now we can deploy our application. In this case, I'll just deploy the avatar canister. Now, for the project setup here, the avatar canister is living under source avatar, and we're putting our front-end code in avatar assets. We can generate front-end declarations for our code using the dfx generate command, and I'll have it generate for assets for avatar. This will output JavaScript and TypeScript files that'll allow our front end to interface with our canister automatically. Those live under avatar assets, under source, declarations, avatar. A lot of this is automatically generated. You don't need to worry about it. The important portion is that we have a process.env.canister ID. dfx is going to provide us with this information by storing information for the internet computer, or the production network is going to live in canister_ids.json, and during local development you can find your local canister IDs under dfx local canister_ids.json, and there we're going to find our avatar. Now, in order for our front end to know which one we're talking to, in the case where we're using Webpack, during development, we will look at dfx local canister_ids.json. Otherwise, we will read our canister IDs from canister_ids.json. And we are using a configuration here to replace avatar canister ID with the actual string that we're looking for. This is going to be important for anyone who's not using Webpack. If you're using another service, you can find a guide on migrating toward this development pattern on the dfx docs page. So we know about which node environment we're in, the avatar canister ID, and then the one other thing that we will be using here is the internet identity URL. We are going to be authenticating with internet identity. And currently, during development, we have to deploy internet identity locally. Otherwise, we will talk to the public internet identity. Great. So now let's start up our application. Following the guide here, what we're going to need to do is to go over to internet identity. We already have a replica running, so I'm going to go over to the README and get this canister running as well by copying this command. I always like to remove that just to be safe. Get a clean setup here. So now this is going to build the internet identity, run it locally on my machine. I'll provide a link for you to clone this as well. And this will give us a local target so that it can accept the signatures from internet identity, and we'll be able to actually test our full application. Now we can double check DFX, answer, ID, internet, identity. And we will copy that canister, go back over to our application, and paste this into Webpack config.js. So now we'll point at the correct canister, add authorize on the end, and now we should be good to go. Now we can start up the application with Npm Start and take a look at what's going on. All right, so here we are on the landing page. I think I had some residual state, but this is what we land on. The application has detected that I'm not authenticated, so we'll start by logging in with internet identity. This happens during development. I'm going to need to create a new internet identity every time. But if we are using the real internet identity, that's not going to be an issue for your users. All right, let's try that again. Great. Our user now is authenticated. And we've tried to fetch to see if the avatar has been created for this authenticated user, and it hasn't yet. So we can go ahead and create something. And we can create an identity. This is using a practice called optimistic updates. It's a UI pattern that I highly encourage anyone to use. The implementation details are React specific, but essentially you update the UI as if you were successful while you allow the update to happen in the backend, in the background, and then you only alert if something's gone wrong. So here we go. We've got our interface here, some very simple information that we've coded in the backend. We can make updates to our account as well. So this is the full CRUD application. Let's take a look at where some of the integration logic happens here. So if we come into the front end, I'm not going to go into all of the React specific development, but the important information is here. We have an auth client in our state, as well as an actor and a check for whether we're authenticated. Once we clicked that blue login button, we call the auth client.login, which is going to call out to that process environment variable. So that's dependent on whether we're in development or in production. And then we have a callback for onSuccess, where we set up our actor. This createActor method came from those auto-generated declarations. So if we take a look at that here, this file will have three main exports. One is the canister ID. Then there is a createActor method, which takes a canister ID and optional options, constructs an HTTP agent. This is the primary mechanism that JavaScript uses to make calls to the Internet Computer using the Internet Computer's API. And we've got a little bit of extra logic wrapped up in there. And then the additional export is a named export based off of the canister that you're talking to, where we already go ahead and create it for you. So this will give you an anonymous identity by default. But since with the authentication, we need to have a non-anonymous identity, what we do is we create our actor, we import the canister ID, and then we pass to the agent, the HTTP agent, an identity that comes from our auth client, which has been authenticated. So this will give us a unique identity that allows each principal to only be able to control its own resource. So this is how the other side, the client side of what we coded in the previous episode. The rest of the logic is just about making the UI nice and responsive, and then sending the information out. Now, here's an example of where we interact with the canister that we've created. What we can do is say we store our profile. The profile update comes from the declarations that we wrote in our backend. We know about all of the types because I'm writing this in TypeScript. And so we're able to have this nice pattern for interacting with the actor. So we are storing our actor. Let's look at a spot where we use the actor, like in create profile. So this is a callback for the form. Saving state to local storage is generally a good practice. Here's the way that I was putting the little notifications up, but the logic is right here. So we take our actor, and because we know about the actor, we know about our full interface that we defined previously. So all of our methods, create, read, update, and delete. And in the create profile form, we create the actor by saying actor.create profile. Then we take the response. We can check our result types. So OK is going to tell us that we were successful. Otherwise, we have an error, and we can do some error handling nicely in the UI. We can then chain this and say await actor read, and then update the state accordingly if needed. So the main takeaway is, once you have the information that we have created, all of our functions, all of this work of nicely typing them, we can take that and use it to our advantage in the front end because we have very predictable updates and changes and an API that's already defined itself. The rest is just building out the UI. And for most people, this is going to differ largely according to your application. But if you are interested, there is a live stream where I coded the main implementation of this in real time that we'll be uploading alongside this episode. So this covers the basic details of how we take the avatar information, we get the declarations, and then we wire them up into a front-end application with a result that looks something like this. In the next episode, we will iterate on the IC avatar application, adding a type for an image that we can upload, and also adding the ability to upload that image from the front end. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next time.